Coming up on this Wednesday edition of Daybreak, it turns out Japan's air defense identification zone overlaps with that of Korea. Korea's defense minister says he will push to expand Korea's zone so it covers all of Korea's territory. Diplomatic sources in Washington say North Korea's uranium enrichment program and long-range missiles top the agenda at recent talks between regional powers as diplomacy continues to resume the stalled six-party denuclearization talks. Plus, the size of Korea's underground economy has been estimated at nearly $300 billion, nearly a quarter of the country's nominal GDP. Daybreak begins now.
Good to have you with us. You're watching Daybreak on Wednesday, November 27th. Live from Seoul, I'm Kim Hyun-ji. We begin with the airspace controversy between Korea, China, and Japan, which just got a bit more complicated. Korea's defense ministry on Tuesday said that Japan's air defense zone includes the Korean island of Marado, which is located near Jeju Island. The issue came to a head after China expanded its own air defense zone over the East China Sea to include Korea-controlled Ieodo, a submerged rock between Korea and China. Our Shin Se-min has the top story.
It turns out Japan's air defense identification zone not only includes Korea Ieodo Island, but also encroaches on the airspace over Marado, an island located southwest of Jeju Island. Korean Defense Ministry spokesperson Kim Min-seok explained this is because Japan's original air defense zone was demarcated before the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea was adopted in 1982. The UN Convention has expanded the range of a country's territory from 3 nautical miles to 12 nautical miles from its sea baseline, stretching Japan's air defense zone over both Ieodo and Marado. But the spokesperson said Korea is not obligated to notify Japan of Korean aircraft entering the zone. Meanwhile, Defense Minister Kim Kwan-jin during a National Defense Committee meeting Tuesday said he will push to expand Korea's current air defense zone so that it includes Ieodo. He pointed out that Japan should have no objections to the move as the submerged rocky islets are already controlled by Korea. The air zone controversy was stirred up after China announced Saturday that it had established a new air defense zone over the East China Sea that overlaps with Korea's air defense zone and includes Ieodo Island. China said on Tuesday that it wants to talk to Korea on friendly terms about the change. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
North Korea is staying mum about the status of a South Korean citizen who has been detained in a communist country. South Korea says it may seek the help of third parties to secure the detainee's release. Meanwhile, Pyongyang has accepted Seoul's proposal to resume talks on easing regulations for the travel and communications at the Inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Park. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee reports.
South Korea's Ministry of Unification said Tuesday that North Korea has denied repeated calls for details about a South Korean detainee for 2 straight days. The official request was sent via the Inter-Korean hotline at Panmunjom. North Korea claimed on November 7th that it had arrested a South Korean spy working for the National Intelligence Service as it tried to enter Pyongyang. No more information about the detainee has been released, such as his name or whether he has been charged with any crime. South Korea's intelligence agency denies that the man is one of its agents, while some Christian groups said that he is a missionary based in China. The government set up a task force last week to handle the issue. An official at the Unification Ministry said that if the North continues to reject Seoul's requests, they may be sent through a third party, such as an international organization. Meanwhile, the ministry said that the North had accepted a proposal to hold working-level talks Friday on easing regulations for the passage, communications, and customs at the Kaesong Industrial Complex. The meeting hasn't been held for more than 2 months, ever since the last one was called off by the North at the last minute. The two Koreas have held a number of working-level meetings to improve the management of the joint factory zone after it reopened in September following 5 months of closure. If Friday's discussions go well, they could lead to the introduction of an electronic system to ease the passage of South Korean workers to and from Kaesong, as well as the usage of mobile phones and the internet by the end of this year. However, many say that such an agreement will depend entirely on how enthusiastic the North is about the issue. 황성희, Arirang News.
North Korea's uranium enrichment program and its long-range missiles were the main topics of conversation at recent talks between regional powers, as relevant countries attempt to breathe new life into resuming international talks with Pyongyang. Diplomatic sources in Washington say that while related topics were covered, the denuclearization of North Korea, a key precondition of the U.S. and its allies for the resumption of the six-party nuclear talks, was not on the table. The sources added that they hope to get a Pyongyang's commitment to denuclearize after the multilateral dialogue resumes. The six-way negotiations involving the two Koreas, the United States, China, Japan, and Russia, have been stalled since late 2008. After months of bipartisan wrangling over a range of political issues, the National Assembly has finally begun working on next year's budget bill. But due to the huge delay, it's unclear whether the spending proposal will be passed before the end of the year. Han Daeun tells us how this will affect the economy.
Lawmakers are off to a late start on getting the 2014 budget through the National Assembly, but took a step forward with the passage of a government settlement bill on Tuesday. The late start comes in the midst of a prolonged parliamentary stalemate that's put the budget bill 3 months behind schedule. The settlement bill will be put up for a vote on Thursday. But there's still another hurdle. If the budget proposal does not pass before the new fiscal year begins, at least 40% of next year's budget will not be available until the bill is passed. That means the majority of the funds set aside to speed up the nation's sluggish economic recovery will be suspended, raising concerns that the long delay in bringing the budget up for consideration could hurt the domestic economy. Officials at the Ministry of Strategy and Finance say if lawmakers fail to pass the bill before the end of the year, more than $132 billion of next year's budget of roughly $336 billion will be suspended. When a new budget bill is not passed within the fixed legal period, government spending will be limited to items specified as essential by the Constitution. And those items will be based on the budget for the previous fiscal year. The $132 billion that could be suspended includes subsidies for some 650,000 jobs, about $188 billion for social overhead capital, and roughly $160 billion for research and development. Discretionary spending in the welfare budget and the amount of $99 billion would also be suspended. Moreover, until a new budget is passed, the government won't be able to borrow money for purposes not specified by the Constitution. Analysts have urged lawmakers to pass the budget proposal quickly, as the timing of its passage is critical to the nation's economy. Han Daeun, Arirang News.
If you want the latest news from Korea and around the world.
Return to the negotiations.
President Park Geun-hye plans, given the current circumstances.
On your way to work or at home.
Defense Ministry. The legislature will convene a.
Tune into Daybreak on Arirang TV.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Tuesday. One of President Park Geun-hye's campaign pledges was to reduce the size of the so-called underground economy, that is, money swirling around under the radar of the government and tax collectors. While a recent study says the size of Korea's underground economy amounts to nearly $300 billion, larger than the OECD average. Park Ji-won reports on how the shadow economy is sapping the nation of much-needed revenue.
According to a recent study by LG Economic Research Institute, Korea's underground economy last year was estimated at $296 billion. This accounts for nearly 1/4 of Korea's nominal GDP last year, which stood at around $1.2 trillion. The estimated share of underground economy in 2010 was almost the same as last year. When compared to other OECD member countries, where the average was about 18% in 2010, Korea's proportion at a quarter is considered high. Countries like Turkey, Italy, Greece, which have gone through severe financial crisis in recent years, have larger shadow economies than Korea, while other countries like the US and Switzerland have shadow economies that represent less than 10% of their annual nominal GDP size. Due to the size of Korea's underground economy, the study says the government collected less than half of its potential maximum tax revenue last year. Advanced countries on average collect about 70% of the potential maximum tax revenue. The paper attributes Korea's relatively large underground economy to the nation's high number of high-income, self-employed businesses, which tend to not report their actual income to the National Tax Service. To reduce the scope of the shadow economy, the LG Economic Research Institute suggests that the government come up with policies that provide incentives for the self-employed to report all their business transactions to the National Tax Service. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Consumer confidence in the local economy surged to the highest level in nearly 3 years in November. The Bank of Korea said on Monday that its consumer spending index posted 107, up 1 point from the previous month. The figure is the highest since February 2011, when the nation's CSI stood at 109. A reading over 100 means those optimistic about the economy outnumber the pessimists. The central bank attributed this month's uptick to greater consumption of everyday goods, education, medical, and communication services. Korea is constantly striving to boost its tourist appeal, and it appears to be working. As latest figures show, more than 10 million tourists have traveled to Korea so far this year. The Korea Culture and Tourism Institute says the 10 million mark was surpassed at the end of October, a month earlier than last year. It's also up over 9% from the same period of 2012. Most visitors were from China with around 3.8 million people, followed by Japan with 2.3 million, down 20% from last year, mainly due to a weaker yen. The Korea Tourism Organization has set a goal of attracting 12.5 million foreign tourists for the year, but some experts doubt that target is attainable. They say China's new travel law that contains stricter regulations on tours demanding extra fees and those requiring visits to shopping centers are having an impact on tourism to Korea. Hyundai Motor is pinning its hopes on its new high-end Genesis model to help boost the company's flagging sales in the United States. Korea's largest automaker on Tuesday unveiled the premium sedan that will go on sale in the world's largest auto market next year. The announcement comes on the heels of a number of recalls that have taken a bite out of Hyundai's bottom line in the U.S. Hyundai sales rose less than 2% in the first 10 months of this year, compared to the industry average of 8%. Hyundai is hoping the Genesis will lift sales by 10% from this year's target. The sedan will also be rolled out in Europe, China, and the Middle East in 2014. The European Union is demanding Korea improve its surveillance over illegal fishing overseas. The EU's fisheries chief said Tuesday that Korea will face trade measures if it doesn't do more to crack down on illegal fishing. Given the EU is the world's biggest trading bloc, possible sanctions could hurt Korea's economy. Responding to the EU's statement, the Korean government said it has revised a law to strengthen fishing regulations, set to go into effect early next year. The landmark Iran nuclear deal has been welcomed by Korean importers and exporters who have been hampered by the strict sanctions placed on Tehran. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The nuclear deal with Iran has given hope to some Korean businesses that have been affected by the U.S. economic sanctions on Iran. While Iran and the six world powers hammer out the details of the comprehensive nuclear agreement over the next several months, not much is expected to change in terms of lifting the sanctions. But if and when they are, Korean importers and exporters stand to benefit. Major Korean importers of Iranian oil welcome Sunday's nuclear deal, including companies like SK Energy and Hyundai Oil Bank, which in the past used Iranian oil imports to supply 10 to 15% of its total. The two importers say the nuclear deal with Iran and the lifting of economic sanctions would reduce a significant amount of burden they're facing, which includes trying to find other oil suppliers. Iran has been supplying oil to Korea since the 1970s and has been regarded as a major business partner. But with the U.S. economic sanctions placed on Iran, Korea, which is a U.S. ally, had to steadily decrease its reliance on Iranian oil in 2012. Korea imported around $4.6 billion worth of Iranian crude from January to October this year, a 33% drop from the previous year. In addition, the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy and the Central Bank of Korea say the lifting of sanctions on Iran would also give Korean auto exporters a boost. They used to provide more than half of the steel plates used for Iranian automobiles. Also, the International Contractors Association of Korea said it expects positive effects for construction companies in Korea that do business overseas. Iran had been one of the top 5 marketplaces for Korean construction companies since the 1970s, before coming to an abrupt stop in 2000 due to the Iranian nuclear issue. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Researchers in Korea have developed a better tracking system for the movement of nerve cells, which could have major implications for cures for brain disorders such as cystic fibrosis. Son Jang-in reports.
This is a picture of the nerve cells of a mouse as seen through a microscope. The cells have been injected with the fluorescent chloride indicator protein called clomelain that turns color when exposed to light. The color changes depending on the concentration of chlorine ions in the cell. Blue means it contains chlorine ions, while yellow means it is chlorine ion free. When the chlorine ion concentration in the cell increases, the cell slows down, and this enables neuroscientists to track the way nerve cells move in the body. It could also help scientists find a cure for brain disorders such as cystic fibrosis and accidents such as stroke, which occur when there is a problem with chlorine ion in the brain.
First of all, having an improved way to measure chloride will allow us to have better tools for screening drugs that affect targets associated with chloride fluxes.
Local researchers at the Korea Institute of Science and Technology have recently developed an improved optogenetic sensor called superclomelain that provides a clearer image than the first-generation clomelain. This recent advance is expected to enable doctors to visually track neural activity and develop a powerful approach to curing brain disorders. The research was featured recently in the Journal of Neuroscience, a renowned U.S. publication in the field of neurology. Son Jang-in, Arirang News.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we kick things off on the golf course. After the season's last event, the CME Group title holders over the weekend, Park In-bi clinched the top earner for the second straight year. For the first time, she finished off the year ranked #1 in the world. Now for the 33rd straight week, the South Korean is ranked #1 in the latest LPGA ranking, giving her the end of the year top spot. Now she finishes with 11.79 points, with Suzanne Pettersson in second at 11.08. Park In-bi, despite her struggles in the second half of the season, started off the season with 3 straight LPGA major titles before falling short on the calendar Grand Slam. And moving on to football, where FC Seoul's head coach Choi Young-soo and the honorary president of the KFA, Chung Mong-jun, received top awards at the AFC Awards ceremony. Now, first off, the 43-year-old FC Seoul head coach Choi Young-soo earns the AFC Manager of the Year award as he led FC Seoul to a second-place finish during the AFC Champions League and another top-4 finish in the K-League Classic. That becomes the second straight K-League Classic manager to win the award since Ulsan's Kim Ho-gon earned the award last season. Meanwhile, the honorary president of the KFA, Chung Mong-jun, receives one of the top awards, the Diamond of Asia Award for a contribution to Asian football. That becomes the first Korean to receive the award. And moving on to some Tuesday night's KBL action, we had one game that took place last night, so let's take a look at the Changwon LG Sakers take on the Jeonju KCC Aegis. Of course, going into the game here, first quarter of the game, both sides just terrible from the field as LG takes an 8-6 lead after the first quarter. Second quarter, a different story as Park Young-sang puts up 10 points for KCC, with 6 different LG players scoring on the quarter as LG takes a 33-21 lead going into halftime. Third quarter, here comes KCC outscoring LG 23-13 in the quarter thanks to Kang Byung-hyun's 12 points in the third. But Davon Jefferson answers back with 10 points in the fourth quarter of the game as LG hangs on to take this game 68-63. And shifting over to some Tuesday night's V-League action as Rush and Cash ran into their match against Korean Air Jumbo, still looking for their first win of the season. Let's take a look at the highlights. Of course, the first set of the game, the Korean Air Jumbo is looking great, taking the first set 25-22 before cruising past the Vespids in the second set as well, 25-23. But the third set, a different story as both teams just go at it. Nearly an hour passes and after 31 deuces, Korean Air Jumbos take the third set 56-54, a combined score of 110 points. A new record for a set score as Korean Air Jumbos take this game 3-0. And finishing things off, quite a controversy with the Korean Olympic team at the moment after some budget cuts, that is. Now, it was reported that the Olympic team is currently facing a 600 million won budget cut, or roughly $565,000 in cuts. However, 500 million won, or $471,000 will be on the daily stipend for the athletes. The athletes will have to work with 40,000 won per day, or less than $40, which is way too little for the athletes. However, officials added that with the budget cuts, some athletes might have to spend money out of their own pockets if needed, leading to negative responses from the fans. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good Wednesday morning to you. I'm Lee Ji-hyun with your latest weather forecast. Well, the coldest weather of the year is on its way, or it's here. Another band of sleet and snow is in store for much of the country, and temperature dropped once again here in Seoul. And other parts of the nation is also waking up to colder morning today, so please dress in layers, wear mufflers, gloves to keep you warm. And many parts of the nation saw dust of snow last night and will continue to see winter showers with the chance of some significant snowfall on the ground in the central region. Up to 5 centimeters is set to hit the Seoul metro area, whereas down south will receive a light showers. In fact, heavy snow watch has been issued in parts of Gangwon, Gyeonggi, and Chungcheong regions today, but heavy snow watch could be expanded to other regions during the day, so please keep an eye on the updated weather forecast. So could we expect any warmer anytime soon? Well, tomorrow will be colder than today and more sub-zero conditions are expected over the week, but by the weekend, temperatures are likely to turn warm again. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. Seoul will climb up to 1 degrees, while Daegu and Gwangju will come up to 6 respectively, while the high for Busan will hit 13 with a few drizzles. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju will remain at 12, Daejeon will rise to 5, while Dokdo peak at 8, and Mount Keungang will be freezing at -5. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. That's all from me at this hour. Hope you have a wonderful Wednesday.
That does it for now. Stay tuned to Arirang for more of the day's latest. Thank you for watching.